Hey folks, top of the morning to you. Michael here. Grandkids call me Rue. Welcome to Good News Rue. It is, January the 2nd, 2024. And we are in the book of John. In this one, I haven't covered up down here. Gospel According to John by Crossway. Hope you've been following along and painting. Not to make the greatest art in the world, but to make a story. Ooh, I'm back to that story. A story that connects you with what you read so that you don't... I'm not telling you to memorize everything in here. If you can ever memorize scripture, you should. I'm not that grand at it. I'm probably great at it if it's got music behind it, because I remember songs and those lyrics and that concept get in my mind. But this music will be done here in just a minute, and I'll dig into this, and I'll show you this messy desk that I have here. It's kind of messy, but there is a little bit of a, what is it? They call it a method to some of this madness. Is that I have a good bookshelf over there of books that I've kept for years. There's a few new ones, but most of them are books that I've really put something into and hold on to. I've written in the front covers. And that's how I study a book. This to my left is my Bibles more and reference tools here. Across the way is a box that has more storytelling. There's a book up. There's about 8 books up there that have blacksmithing in it. Over to my right is a bookshelf that's all art books. Not all art books, about half art books now, because I've changed it some this year. And then some consulting work books that I'm working with over there. So my life is made up of other people's words. And isn't it ironic that our life is made up of the Word? And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And that's what the Gospels are about. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And they all were there. They all, in the words of John, 1 John 1 says that we saw him, we touched him, we were with him, and now we're telling you. And that's what John has written here. John is one of those books that if you have a friend who doesn't like the Bible at all, who says, I just don't get it, I don't understand it, and you go, I don't understand all of it, and you go, how could you possibly understand all of it? Could you understand a little bit of it? So tell them to read John. Just say, start reading in John and see what you find out. See how God refers to himself in the universe. See that he was the Word, and the Word became flesh, and the Word dwelt among us. Pitched his tent among us is the way we would say it here. It's the way Nouwen says it. Moved into the neighborhood is the way that it would be said by Eugene Peterson in The Message. All those are references that I like to look at. Why? Because different men in different time periods say different things. Okay? And they're all basing it on the truth of who they are, but who God has made them to. So a quick look at my desk here, and I'll just show you. Let me just back this camera out just for a second. Thanks for being on this morning. I appreciate you guys piling in here and getting up early to start off your day like this. This is a look from overhead. There's a little microphone that I use. It captures my voice when I'm in here like this. It's just a little made by the Zoom company, and I've used those for years. Here's my Cheap Joe's Art stuff. I think you can see my glass here. This is kind of a broad spectrum. Pile of pens over here. There's my coffee and my teacup. This is the gospel book I was just holding. This is the book of John here. This is my old NIV study Bible. Here it is right here. Okay. And so I love this Bible because it has a lot of historical references and also commentaries down here by the group of people who put together to write this. And so I love what they say and how they break it down. And I think this one is particularly good in pointing everything back to Jesus and not trying to take it off on what man said over here, but what God is doing contextually. And I think that's huge, that we learn the context in which things were said, but also culturally, it's looking at the time period. So this has, if you remember the beginning of this Christmas season, I read this piece right here from the beginning of John. It's marked from here to here. He spoke and the galaxies whirled into place. From time to time, I just go back and that's marked. I just read it. It's just unbelievable. It reminds me, I think I said it then and I'll say it now. It reminds me of the magician's nephew in the Chronicles of Narnia, where Aslan is singing and the creation is just popping up. He's going like, I think of a musical. I think of Andre Bocelli singing the prayer, and boom, and a tree appears, and there's green grass that covers the hills, like those mountain landscapes that I sort of cartoonish put into my paintings. That sweep of sap green that goes across with a little bit of purple hue and blue as you look across. You got to remember, I grew up near and lived for years in the Appalachian Mountains, in the near the Blue Ridge, and they're called Blue Ridge because right now they're just gray blue. And even in the summertime, when the sun sets behind them, they tend to go blue. And so I think those things remind me of colors and love and words and creation. And so that's kind of how I see that through all the words. So, all right. So this is my desk. So this is this Bible. This is by Josh Moody. This is a commentary that I've been reading along with the book of John, and it's John. This is John 13 for 21. He did it in 2 copies here. I think there's another one here probably somewhere. Look at that. John 1 through 12. Josh Moody. These were given to me by, actually, I haven't written in these because they were sort of loaned to me by my friend Chris Payne, pastor. And I said, I'm getting ready to do John. And he goes, oh my gosh, these were handed to me last week. Would you like to have them? And I go, give those to me. And so this is a young man, and I like his style. And so I keep him here. So this is how I prepare for Tuesday morning. Okay. Here's Following Jesus by Henry Nouwen. This is how I take notes in my books. When I read a book, let me zoom in on that a little bit. Can I do that? Let's see. There's another Bible or two laying here. This is the Message by Eugene Peterson. This is the NIV version. This is the, so I pile them here, but I reach from one to the other and I get a contrasting view of how they reflect and say. And then out of that, I kind of put together my own storytelling story of what my mind can grasp and hold. Using this truth, I don't want to rewrite anything. That's not my job. My job's not to change scripture. My job is to let it connect with my heart. Okay? That's the important thing here. Let me show you what this is just real quickly here. I think I've talked to you about this before, but let me show you what it looks like. Let me focus in on it here just a second. I think that's a pretty good focus. Okay? This book is probably, and I'm going to say this may be the best book that, other than the Bible, that I've ever read. Boop, just like that. It's called Following Jesus, Finding Our Way Home in an Age of Anxiety, and it's by Henry Nouwen. Nouwen died in the 90s. This book came out in 2019. Now, isn't that interesting? Not really. He left behind a lot of transcripts. His team, which still has a pretty productive team of publishing his works and all the things. Very interesting guy, Danish, I believe, and kind of a frail guy, an absolute genius when it comes to words. And I put him up there with the Tolkiens and the C.S. Lewis guys who thought deeper, R.C. Sproul guys who just had a processing brain. Harvard, just educated beyond education, and then was called to work with the severely mentally handicapped. And you go like, wow, why would I need all this to work with these people? But God really used that in his life, as God does. And that's from our story today that we're going to talk about. So, but this is Henry Nouwen. It's Nouwen. It's pronounced Nouwen, okay? Not know when, but what I do is when I read when I read something in the book that really captures me, okay? For instance, here's one that says joy. It's a new experience, 95, 96. So if I look on page 95, and I read this book once, and I didn't take many notes. I just read it through. And then I read it again, and I took some notes, and now I'm spot reading it again. Joy is always about the experience of life as new. Joy is connected to newness. No one ever says, oh, there's that old joy again. No, there's old sorrow, but there's no old joy. Joy is always new. And isn't that an exciting thing that he says? And he's comparing the things of the difference between how we want to be happy and what joy comes from in here because God is doing something. And so I want people talk to me about that all the time. And so the way Nouwen says this whole section on that, I even from here, my joy will be yours. I will mark that with a little note to me, sometimes a little sketch or a picture, or I'll just draw something. Here's a little arrow that says little steps. I don't even know if I saw that in there, but maybe I did. And I'll write a page number. And so I know where to find it. That's better than me highlighting, because once I highlight a book like this, I would have highlighted the entire book. Does that make sense? That helps me study. So I found something in here this morning that I wanted to read out of this. And it has to do with John 18, which is where we're going to be today. A long intro to get you into kind of the process. I hope you have your own process. But if you sit down to just read with this Bible by itself, and I've started a little sketch there, you see it. If you sit down to read with this Bible by itself, chapter 18 today, 2024, I wrote, and you read it, you might read it like this. When Jesus had spoken these words, he went out with his disciples. Spoken what words? Well, he had just finished praying, and then remember, he's out toward the garden a little bit, but he goes through, it says, the Kidron, by the brook in Kidron. Some say he went through the Kidron Valley. And so there was a stream there, or a brook there, and there was a garden in there, and the disciples knew it. They knew where it was. Judas knew where it was. Lots of people probably went there. Jesus went there late in the evenings and at night sometimes when everybody else was sleeping. And he went there, and sometimes his disciples, they leaned against probably an olive tree and snoozed a little bit, but he would go off and he would pray. There's something good about finding a place in your house where it's not theatrical, but it's just a place where you go sit and you just contemplate God a little bit. Contemplation is my new word that I talked about yesterday, even on the show. Was it yesterday? Monday? Yeah. But that comes out of here too. Not that it comes out of here, but Nouwen was a guy who sat and contemplated. Usually great writers, great artists, they spend a lot of time contemplating what they're going to do till that story comes together. So here Jesus goes and he's praying. And so this is the story right here. So that's a little look into how how this comes together. Why would I have the message out here today? Because I wanted to see how he said he crossed the brook in Kidron to a place there was a garden, and he and his disciples entered it. Judas, his betrayer, knew of this place. Ooh, John is setting that up to say, remember Judas? He's got a plan to play in the story. He's the guy that's complained at Mary when she broke the nard and washed Jesus' feet. He's the guy who Jesus says, one of you at the table will deny me. And they're going, come on, who? And Judas runs out. And so he knew the place because Jesus and his disciples went there often. So what happens in this story? Listen to this. So when he had spoken these words, he goes out with his disciples across the brook of Kidron. There was a garden. Now Judas, who betrayed him, also knew of the place, for Jesus often met there. So Judas, having procured a band of soldiers, remember they had paid him some money, to betray Christ and say, you find him somewhere away from all the crowds, and we'll come and arrest him. And I have heard people teach on this a little bit and say, oh, how wrong Judas was. Oh, poor old Jesus. Wait, whoa. Jesus is God here, Emmanuel, God with us. He's still part of the triune, the God the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. He's in charge of this whole thing. This is his plan from the get-go, that he would be betrayed, that one man would have to sacrifice his life to get man out of sin. This is the gospel. This is the good news. The good news is that God gave his Son for you so that you can have life. Sounds like John 3:16, doesn't it? See, John is a master storyteller in how he writes this, and he doesn't miss things. Doesn't seem like he does. He put in what he wanted to put in. So Judas, having procured a band of soldiers and some officers from the chief priests, oh, he's got some of the priests there, and the Pharisees, they've sort of ganged up together. The two entities that were always going, the Pharisees and the scribes and all the Sadducees are all going against each other. Now they suddenly have a common enemy. You know, isn't it amazing what happens when we get a common enemy? We go, let's get the soldiers. Let's get all the priests on this side. Let's get all the denominations to come against it. This is wrong. We'll all say that's wrong. So they've got people coming together, and they all got their lanterns and their torches and their weapons, it says in verse 3. Then Jesus, verse 4, and I want to, the rest of our time, I want to talk about this and then do a little sketch. And here it is. Then, verse 4, then Jesus, knowing all that would happen to him, stop. Jesus, knowing all that would happen to him. If anyone ever says to you, oh, I bet Jesus was so surprised that he was betrayed by the church. Oh, I bet he's so surprised that his follower Judas, he just chose poorly, would betray him. I bet he's so surprised that this has gone sour. I wish he had taken another road and not gone through that common valley, the Kidron Valley, to get to that little garden where he prayed. It was probably so serene and where he dumped his heart. And now, here in this little garden, they come to arrest him. Wipe all that from your mind, because here's what the scripture says. Then Jesus, knowing all that would happen to him, came forward and said to them, who do you seek? Wow. When I look at what Moody says about that, he says, nothing, verse 4, here's why I love this concept. I think, tell me more about that he knew everything. Nothing happens outside of God's knowledge of everything. That's worth a note. Nothing happens outside of God's knowledge of everything. What a great sentence. That's a sentence that you wish every editor could teach their writers to write. Nothing happens outside of God's knowledge everywhere. Boop. You cannot be hidden from his sight, nor fall from his care, not even in your gardens of Gethsemane, not even where you go and sneak in and try to find darkness by cover or do this. You're seen, you're in the light, you're walking with the one who made you, who knows you, who loves you. What is comforting in our suffering, listen, please catch this. Then we're going to draw a picture. What is comforting in our suffering is not just that God knows about it. Anything that happens, the tragedies, the dramas, the hurt, the loved ones, God's not surprised by any of that. Those are the things that happen in this world, in this life. But we are in this world where we're not supposed to be of this world. What is comforting is this. Our suffering is not just that God knows about it, but he has also planned it for some good in the end that may be invisible to us. Something that happens to you. If you trust him, and you follow him, and you plow on through him, that will turn around to something that means something. And it may not even be you. It may be someone else. You know, I told you that my son and I went to shoot. I told some folks. I told a lot of people a lot of things. We went to shoot a foster video for Foster Association, which is ironic because he was coming back from Africa on a mission trip. Been there a year after he finished as an athlete in college, and he worked with me in video. We drove down to Orlando. I said, let's don't fly, let's just drive, spend some time together. So we drove down, and it's a good ways from here, about 8-hour drive from me, and a little more from where we wandered into. We went to this house that was that had lots of foster children. I thought they'd had lots. They'd had, I think, 10 foster children. And now my son has had 24 foster children, and one's adopted. And I didn't know it was going to hit his heart. And I didn't know how he was struggling coming back from Africa and all he had seen and all he had worked through, all he was trying to do. I didn't know. I knew some of it, but I didn't know the depth of it. But during the process of this interview, he's running the camera and I'm running the audio. I got my boom pole and he's got 2 cameras and I've got another camera set up. We're trying to get shots on this dad who's really never been interviewed like this before. So I'm asking him questions. What have you really learned about bringing these children into your home, and how hard that is when you don't want to connect because you're afraid that you'll suffer when they leave because you've fallen in love with these children and you feel like you're helping them, and then they're swept back to places that might not be as solid as where they are. That hurts your heart. How do you feel about that? And he said this to us. Now, remember the company we were working with and my friend who was producing this? And here I am, I've got my headphones on and I've got the microphone and I'm hearing his voice. When he opens his mouth, I hear his lips and his tongue click. That's how close I am with the microphone. And I want this audio to be right for a group we were putting this story together for. And he says, I have come to realize that it may not be about me and what I've learned that will change the world for God. It may be who I'm raising and how they'll see that from me and how they'll change things. And he said it in such a way, he says, it's not about me, it's about who I'm raising to be different in the world. And I look back at my friend, I look back like this at my friend, and it sounds really ridiculous, but we do this. I want to say that's the money shot. And it wasn't about money in this case. It was about hearts. But, I couldn't drop my camera, so I went with one hand off the boom pole. I went like that. I don't need to shoot any more today. I can show their house and tell the story, and then I can interview him for 4 seconds and have him say, this is what I've learned through this whole process. Boom. Here is Christ. He's in the garden, and they come to him, and they're all with weapons and lanterns and torches, and it's the religious leaders, it's the soldiers, and they're all stacked up, and Judas is in the midst of them somewhere. Now, Matthew, Mark, and Luke say that Judas kisses Jesus on the cheek. John doesn't record that. I don't know why. But there's an interesting thing that he does record, and here it is very quickly. So just remember this. He knows what you're going through because nothing surprises him. And they said, Jesus steps out in front of everyone and says, who are you looking for? Who is it you seek? And they said, we seek Jesus of Nazareth. Go back and read the Gospels, and you'll see that the reason that that's so important is that how could he be the Messiah? Because everyone knows that nothing good could come out of Nazareth. You see, as a storyteller in me, I just grab little nuggets like that and I find them and they fall into place. And Jesus answered, I told you, I am he. And when this happened, when he says, Jesus of Nazareth, they said to him, I am he. Judas was standing with them, John says. When Jesus says, I am he, they draw back and fall down. So in my sketch today, I drew this. I drew these little dominoes. There they are. I just penciled them in. Can you see those in my book? I'm making marks there. I drew these little dominoes, just like this. And I'll probably go in and put some marks in them, some lines just like this, so people can recognize them as dominoes. And then I've got one here that's falling into this one, and this one's falling into this one, and this one's falling into this one. I think what happened was this, and here they are. So I'm going to draw these people in later, and I'm going to draw Jesus in here, put his beard in. And assume he had one. We always sort of show him with one. I drew this person here as Peter, And the reason is because there's a little more of this story. I drew him with a sword, and he chops off the ear of Malchus, which is interesting because John names him. And so here, I'll finish this a little later, but you see where this is kind of going here. It's all coming unglued at the seams here. All these people are falling. There's the Roman helmet coming down, and these guys are falling over. I'm going to finish that. Can you see that? So I wonder if they didn't fall for a couple of reasons. One is, I am he. That's all he said. I'm he. Was it shockingness that he agreed to say who he was? Not like, I haven't seen him. Hey, does anyone know where this Jesus of Nazareth is? Nope, haven't seen him. See, they didn't really know. They hadn't been. Many of these people had heard the stories. They hadn't been close enough to really see who he was. And so, so here's what happened. He says, "I'm he." I want to take you back to now and again. Right here, look at this. Let's go back to now, and this is what I love right here. This is how my brains kind of work sometimes. The first time that God reveals his name, the first time that Lord God reveals God's name is when God speaks to Moses in the burning bush. Have you ever seen the Ten Commandments? You know, where Charlton Heston is playing Moses, and he goes up to the mountain, and he's going around, and he goes, Moses. He goes, Did you know that was Charlton Heston's voice? They just slowed down a little bit. He said, we need this voice to be, and Cecil B. DeMille goes, use your voice, and we'll just, Moses, take off your sandals. You know, you're like, oh my gosh. And so what does he say? And Moses says, yes, Lord. And he takes off his sandals, and he goes in, and he says, I need you to, God tells him the story here. I need you to get my people out of Israel. He's going like, whoa, 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 whoa. He says, so I'm going to go back down the mountain, and I'm going to tell them that I'm supposed to go free the people. Who am I going to say sent me? And what does Jesus say? He says, who are you? And he says, my name is I am. I'm the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I am literally means I'm the one that is with you. It means I am the faithful God that journeys with you. I'm the God who comes to be with you, remain with you. I know everything. I'm the God who's leaving and sending back the Holy Spirit, the advocate with you. The words I am mean the one who stays with you. Not I was, not I will be, I am. It's present tense always. And so Nouwen writes this so well here. It's just fascinating to me. And so when Moses says, yeah, but what am I supposed to say? Who am I supposed to tell him sent me? And he says, tell him I am did. So that's the first time that we see the word I am used. And Jesus now has really connected himself to the God of Abraham, which infuriates the church leaders because they can't figure out how Jesus of Nazareth is God incarnate. They just didn't buy it. They were not looking for a king to come as an infant at Christmas. They were looking for a king to come in with an army and clear out Rome. And now here they are with the Roman soldiers toying to get rid of this guy because he's messing everything up for the Jewish leaders, the religious leaders. So for me, that's this story. Who do you seek? This was done to fulfill the word spoken, of those whom you gave me, I have not lost one. And so he's had these disciples with him. And so suddenly Peter whips out a sword and whacks off an ear. I don't know. I think these guys, and that was Jesus puts the ear back on. That's the rest of the story. We'll go into that part later. But I want you to understand something here. I want you to understand that they fell down. Why? One, they were startled. You know, they probably were all standing in lines like this. And when the first one fell back, that's why I thought the dominoes were a good kind of concept. Yeah. Ting, 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 ting. I bet that was a noisy mess. All their metal and leather from their armor and their helmets banging around and their swords hitting other. Oh, it sounds like a piece out of a Three Stooges movie. Crash, bang, bow. And they're all going like, whoa. And what if Judas is just sort of left standing there and you go, hey, what a great way to reveal Judas, huh? That's an interesting storytelling thought. So I painted this picture to see this. When I see, and I'm going to put the words right here, and then we're done for today. I am He. I want to do a little Batman deal on this, you know. I want to do this thing where I go pow, crash, smash, boom, pow, you know, fall down. And I don't really have to do anything here except do this in shambles of these guys with, you know, their everything falling and going out of places. Maybe I'll put a little torch up here going off into no man's land. You know, if I come back in and put some paint in it later, and maybe there's a part of it. Maybe there's a helmet still just kind of turning up here without a person in it. You know, and this person's fallen. And so there's just this scrambled mess. You see, and I might just leave the pencil in there. That makes this picture work. You see how I don't really have to work too hard at doing this? Here's why, is because I'm telling you this story that connects this chaos out of him simply saying this, I'm He, and they take a tumble. He knew who He was. He knew why He came. He knew what He was going through. He knows you. John says, do you know Him? Great little story of the betrayal. Remember, I'm not a theologian or a pastor. I'm a storyteller who puts all these words together to see if they make sense in my own heart. And that's kind of the way I take this on. Thank you for being part of Good News Root. Thanks for sharing it with your friends and family and anybody you want to. Go back over them and listen to them again. I do this not to just get people to do homework. I do this for me. I do this for my grandkids in the future to go, wow, he picked out some pieces here that were meaningful to him. What would I pick out? Maybe yours is a little different, okay? Let it resonate in your own heart. It's almost 9:30, and wow. Margaret, thank you for being on this morning. Dorothy and Linda and Denise and Andrea and Jean, thank you all so much. Linda says, wow. Yeah, it's a wow. Thank you. You make it real. Well, Denise, it's sort of like painting those faces that you do and those animals you paint. They're supposed to look a little outrageous at times and real. And I think that's kind of how Jesus is. I think I followed him as a young man because he's a little bit outrageous. He doesn't do the norm. He turns everything upside down on his head. The last shall be first. The least shall be the greatest. I mean, come on. That's a cool concept when you think about it. He is for all those people. And so he's for the checkout people who don't look like they're interested. Maybe you should be interested in them. He's for the people who serve you out those little drive-through windows or wherever you go. Or, it's why Carol and I try and start conversations with waiters and waitresses and just hear a little bit of their story. Hey, why are you here? What brings you here? You've been doing this for a while? What are you going to do in the future? You're going to keep doing this? It's a fine way to make a living. If it's pushing you creatively. So we do all those sorts of things, not because we're trying to be something here and score points. It's just how we're wired because we believe this so much. Think about verse 4 when you get in there. Then Jesus, knowing all that would have happened to him, he knew it all because God knows everything. He knew they were coming. He went to that garden and set it up. He waited to say, I am He, and watch them fall. I just love that a little bit. And they kind of got their stuff together and like, oh, yeah. All right, I'm done. I can ramble on. Blessings to you guys. I'll see you next time on Good News Root. I'm out of here like I heard the turtles.